The sun hung low over the desert, bleeding gold across the horizon. The air shimmered with heat dry as powder. Tom Braddock, a seasoned cowboy, guided his horse through the canyon trails looking for stray cattle that had wandered too far from the herd. He'd been alone for 3 years since his partner died in a stampede, and the silence of the Arizona Badlands had become his only company. He knew the land well, its dangers too, rattlesnakes, bandits, and the endless thirst. But that day something waited ahead that no man could prepare for. He heard it before he saw it, a cry sharp and full of pain echoing off the canyon walls. Tom reined in his horse, heart thudding. He dismounted, rifle in hand, moving quietly through the brush. When he reached the clearing, his breath caught. There, on the hot red dirt, lay a young Apache woman clutching her leg, tears streaking through the dust on her face. A coiled rattlesnake lay dead beside her, its head crushed by a rock. The bite mark on her calf was already swelling, dark purple spreading fast. Tom dropped to his knees beside her. "Easy now," he said softly. She tried to push him away, panic flashing in her dark eyes. "Don't touch me," she gasped, her English broken but desperate. Tom looked at the wound. It was bad. "If I don't, you'll die," he told her. He'd seen snake bites before. He knew time was short. He pulled his knife, sliced the wound open slightly, and without hesitation pressed his lips to her leg to draw the poison out. She cried out, but he didn't stop until he'd done all he could. Then he wrapped the wound tight with his bandana, praying it was enough. When he lifted his head, she was staring at him, shocked, trembling, breathing hard. "Why?" she whispered. Tom shrugged, wiping blood and dust from his mouth. "Ain't right to let someone die alone in the dirt." He helped her sit up, offering his canteen. She drank greedily, water spilling down her chin. "You got a name?" he asked. She hesitated, then said, "Noya." He nodded. "All right, Noya, let's get you somewhere safe." He lifted her gently, carrying her to his horse. She was light as a feather, but the heat made every step feel like hauling a mountain. The journey back to his cabin was long and silent. She drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling words he didn't understand. Tom spoke softly to her, anything to keep her awake. "You hang on, girl. You're tougher than that snake." When they reached the cabin, he laid her on his cot, cleaned the wound again, and crushed some herbs he'd learned to use from old frontier healers. He packed the bite and covered it, hoping she'd make it through the night. He sat by her side, watching her breathe, feeling the stillness of the desert pressing in. Hours later, as the stars filled the sky, she woke, her fever raging. She tossed and muttered in Apache, eyes wild with confusion. Tom held her shoulders gently. "You're safe," he whispered. "Ain't no one gonna hurt you here." He cooled her brow with water and fed her tiny sips whenever she stirred. The night dragged on and exhaustion pulled at his body, but he didn't dare sleep. He'd seen too many die to let another one go without a fight. When dawn came, she was still breathing, shallow but steady. Tom sighed in relief and finally let himself rest beside the bed. By the second day, her fever began to break. She opened her eyes and found him there, sitting by the window, cleaning his rifle. "You stay," she said weakly. "You no go." He looked up and smiled faintly. "Wasn't planning on it." She managed a tiny smile in return before slipping back into sleep. Over the next few days, she gained strength, eating the soup he made and watching him quietly. Sometimes she spoke of her people, how her village had been burned, how she'd escaped into the desert alone. He listened without interrupting. He understood what loss meant. When she could finally walk again, she stepped outside the cabin, leaning on a stick. The wind tugged at her hair as she looked at the vast desert stretching endlessly beyond. Tom joined her, standing silently beside her. "You should rest a few more days," he said. She shook her head. "No rest for people with ghosts." He chuckled softly. "Ain't that the truth?" They worked together, fixing the corral fence. The quiet between them no longer empty. It was peaceful, like the calm after a long storm. One evening, a rattling sound came from near the barn. Tom turned sharply, rifle ready, thinking it was another snake. But it wasn't. 2 riders approached, their faces hidden by dust and hate. They were bounty hunters hunting Apache survivors for cash. "You harboring one of them savages, cowboy?" The leader sneered. Tom's grip tightened. "Ain't your business what I'm doing?" The man spat. "She's worth $50 to the army. Step aside." Tom's eyes darkened. "You best turn around now." The man laughed and reached for his gun. The shot came fast, echoing through the desert. When the dust cleared, both bounty hunters lay on the ground, their rifles silent. Tom stood still, smoke rising from his gun barrel. Noya rushed to his side, her eyes wide with fear and gratitude. "You kill for me?" she whispered. "Didn't have a choice," he said quietly. "You saved my life," she said. "Now I save yours." Together they buried the men behind the ridge, marking the graves with stones. That night they sat by the fire in silence, the flames dancing in their eyes. For the first time in years, Tom didn't feel alone anymore. Days turned into weeks and the land began to heal, as did they. Noya started tending the small garden behind the cabin, while Tom taught her how to ride and shoot. They laughed more often, shared meals, and spoke of what lay ahead. One night she asked softly, "Why you live alone?" He stared into the fire. "Lost too much. Easier not to lose again." She looked at him gently. "You save people because you don't want to lose yourself." He smiled faintly. "Maybe you're right, Noya." Spring came early that year. The desert bloomed, wildflowers bursting through the dust. One morning as the sun rose, Tom saddled 2 horses instead of 1. "You ready to ride?" he asked. She nodded, her eyes bright. They rode together across the open plains, wind in their hair, laughter echoing through the canyon. The land still held danger, but they faced it side by side, 2 souls saved by mercy and fate. Years later, travelers passing through spoke of an old cowboy and an Apache woman who lived by the canyon's edge. They said he once saved her from a rattlesnake bite, and she saved him from a life of silence. In a land where hate often ruled, they found something rarer than gold: hope. And when the desert wind blew softly through the mesquite trees, it carried their story like a prayer whispered to the wild.